Welcome to a very special Don't Talk to Robots 2022 baseball card design preview and review. Let's get to it. All right, before we jump into this review and preview of some of the 2022 baseball card designs, a few disclaimers so you know what this video is about. All right, disclaimer number one, we are only interested in the design of the card, the aesthetic of the actual card. For more in-depth look and checking out teams, cards to chase, price points of different products, I'd definitely recommend 1 Cent Sports Cards. I will leave a link in the description. He does a great video on most of the sets that come out and ranks them throughout the year. So definitely go and check that out for a more in-depth look. But this video, we're just going to be focusing on the design of the cards. Qualifications, I am what I would think is a designer light. I have been paid to do design in the past, so I think that makes me a professional designer. My full-time job is a web developer, so some of these, there's crossover between design and development, but I do have kind of an eye for design and enjoy picking it apart, looking at fonts and color schemes and that type of thing. So that's kind of what I bring to this video. Also wanted to just talk about design as a process. So someone came up with an idea for these designs, but then after that idea, there was revisions. People had to prove that. Just imagine Topps or Panini, then there's MLB, there's the Players Association, all those types of things. So we're seeing the final design. We are not privy to the whole process of the design. So just wanted to keep that in mind as well as we're picking apart these designs. Also, these are just my opinions. They're not meant to bash anyone or anything, just kind of some things I like about the design, some things I think can improve. But again, just my opinions, take them or leave them. We're also previewing these cards on screen, meaning they are going to look different when it's a printed as opposed to when it's on screen. When it's on screen, you're having light illuminating behind the design. So some things might get lost. Some things might look different just because it's on screen as opposed to an actual physical card. And these are all preview images. At the bottom of the preview images, it says these are mock-up images and not final cards. Designs and contents are subject to change. So just wanted to throw all these disclaimers out before we get into it. Why are we talking about the design of the cards? Well, this week is the kickoff of Topps Series 1 2022. And to celebrate that, we're going to go through some of the 2022 designs. So let's get into it. But before we do that, we got to talk about 2021 Topps Series 1, 2, and update. And I think regardless of any type of video that you made ripping these cards, or you saw a video of people ripping these cards, there was one thing that I think everybody mentioned. It was across the board. And what was that? The names are so hard to read. And why were the names so hard to read? Well, number one, the font was small. That was pretty much, everybody's kind of deduction that the font is too small. And I agree that the font is too small, but there's a couple other reasons why it was difficult to read. One is there's not enough contrast. And what I mean by contrast is if you look at this Jonathan India rookie debut card, you can see that there's red against white, but it's not 100% white. There's some opacity, meaning that there's some background image showing through. And that's just not a great contrast. A better contrast would either having a solid background or a darker color than this red, maybe like a maroon, something that might still tie in with the Reds design, but is a little darker. That would give you more contrast. Also, there's not enough space between the letters for an italic font. So I get what they're going for, having an italic font. It kind of matches all the angles that are in this design. Because there's not spacing between the letters, it's really difficult for your mind to decipher where does one letter start, where does one letter end. Some of the letters will blend together. So it just takes your mind longer to decipher what that is going to say. And so that makes it more difficult to read. Also, there's just a lot of visual noise here. As you can see, you have the name, you have all these angles coming in. There's not a lot of spacing on top of the bottom of this nameplate, so it's kind of right against that nameplate. And so it's very hard for your mind to process that in a quick way. It's going to take a while. It's going to take you maybe squinting, thinking about it a little harder. So one thing I'd like to point out is that Topps actually fixed this issue in some of their designs. Some of these no-hitter cards, also some of the multiplayer cards that they had in their sets, they addressed it. And I think if they went with this as their main design, that would have fixed a lot of problems and a lot of people's complaints. Topps had a fix. What was this fix? Well, they used a larger font size. As you can see here, it's pretty easy to read John Means. It stands out a little more. There's also better contrast. You have a black against white. The opacity is decent at this point. Also, there's just more spacing above and below the words. So that makes it easier, and just less visual noise, as you can see. So it's really easy to read this. So I feel like this approach, this design would have fixed a lot of people's complaints and made it much easier to read these cards. So with that, let's close the book on 2021 design. So I came up with a design rating system. All of these are out of 5 with a high score of 25. What are those things? So legibility, how easy it is to read the names, the position, the team name, the team city, that type of thing, how legible the cards are. Also, we're going to be grading the color scheme. Is the color scheme modern? Does it match the team's colors? Is it appealing color design? Is it a less appealing color design? That type of thing. Also, design elements. So this would be on the 2021 design, those angles that are coming in, just different elements that make up the card design. And then overall design is taking those different design elements and determining how they work together and how the finished overall design looks. And our last criteria is collectability. And my thinking on this is in 5 years and 10 years, when we look back at these designs, are we going to look back at them fondly? Or are we going to look back at them thinking, oh, they kind of swung and missed, didn't really hit the mark with this design? So those are our rating system. Again, the high score of 25. Let's get into it. We will be looking at 5 different baseball card sets. These are some of the more retail flagship offerings from Panini and Topps, and ones that we have preview images now. Now, Topps and Panini will put out these images to retailers, to hobby shops, to online services in order to say, hey, this is what the design's going to look like. Here's going to be all the parallels, that type of thing, in order for people to buy their cards ahead of time. But we can also take a look and get a preview of what these designs are going to look like. So what are the sets we're going to be looking at? We're going to be looking at 2022 Bowman, 2022 Topps Stadium Club, 2022 Gypsy Queen, 2022 Donruss. This is the main Donruss set. And then finishing it up with 2022 Topps Series 1. So let's get into 2022 Bowman. Here we go. We're just jumping right in. And now, one thing that's a little difficult, these preview images, it didn't seem like they had a base design. It was more, this one on the left is a sparkle design, and this one on the right is a gold design. So we're going to have to kind of use our imagination what we think a base card might look like. My guess is that this area here at the top and then along the bottom, it's most likely going to be white. And then we're going to have the image kind of bleeding over in this top corner and on the side as well. So what are some things that I like about this design? Well, I like about this design is that I like that they have the team color as kind of the accent color here. So you can see the nameplate is blue to match the Marlins color scheme. It's kind of a gray and a black here to match the White Sox color scheme. I like that it's very easy to read. I feel like it has a good layout as far as your eye kind of might start up here at the logo. This line takes your eye down to the nameplate and finishes up with the team logo. So I think that's a quality design. I often would think of this design and some of the mid 2010 flagship designs as kind of a Sports Center look. Like you might see that on an insert on Sports Center or on ESPN, or maybe something on a Jumbotron. So that's definitely carried over here where you have these angles and kind of different lights and stuff like that. So if I'd have to say things that I don't like about these cards, would be kind of extra shadows, and you've got what you call maybe like a button look here for the shortstop position element here, as well as the nameplate. You have a highlight and a gradient, so that kind of gives it a three-dimensional look. In my opinion, it'd look nicer if it was just kind of flat design, but that's just my personal aesthetic I kind of like out of designs. But overall, I think it's a quality design. And if you looked at this design, you could say, yeah, this is a Bowman design. It kind of matches that style. So I think they achieved what they're setting out for with this Bowman design. Here we have a parallel, and you can see the preview. I think they're trying to make it look refractory, or this might be some type of one of the aqua refractors, but you kind of have to use your imagination. It's not going to look like someone scribbled over it like it does on this picture here. Going back, I wanted to highlight this too. I I haven't seen kind of the gold or orange parallels like this with the kind of sunburst in here used for a while. I think they used that in the late 2010s. Some of the Topps designs had those type of elements. So it'll be interesting to see these cards in person, how those look. I want to talk a minute about the Invicta design here. I'm not a big fan of kind of all these extra elements, making it look almost like a treasure chest. I think it's meant to look kind of old timey, or kind of like it's you're getting ready for battle, and so you have to go to your treasure chest, open it up, and get the things out of it, that type of thing. And but I think this might be an element too. If this is a chrome card, some of these elements might fade to the background. You might not notice them as much as you do on this preview. So while this might not be my favorite kind of insert design, I'll kind of hold my final judgment until I see that in person. And sometimes these designs on the screen don't look great, but then when you see them on chrome, they really pop and look nice. And some of those background elements that look really pronounced now kind of fade to the background, and it's not that big of a deal. Here are some more inserts from Bowman. This one on the left, the Hi-Fi Futures, is interesting. I like it. It's meant to look like an old school LP, a vinyl record, kind of that kind of a cover of a vinyl record. And I think that will work well. What I'm a little worried about is if they use the same design, the same kind of orange and blue for each player, and just change out the player, it might get a little old. I think if they mixed it up, I'd really like that if they, had Hi-Fi Futures in a different spot, or maybe even a different font. I'm not thinking they'll do that, but I think if they made them look like different album covers, that'd be a really cool approach. We'll have to see about that one. This Virtuosic Vibrations card, I like the font down here. It's very interesting. I feel like the same designer probably designed one of my favorite designs from 2021, the Futurist. As you can see down there, kind of matches a similar style with a thick, bold type font. So I really like this one. I think this will look really nice on the chrome. One thing this background reminds me of, it definitely reminds me of Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls, that music video. So it'll be interesting to see these cards in person. What are my scores for 2022 Bowman baseball cards? Legibility, we're giving it a 4. I think it's really clear. The name, things like the prospect is a little small, but that's not as much of priority as the name and the position, that type of thing. So high scores on the legibility. Color scheme, I really like how they matched the team colors with some of the accent colors. So I'm going to give them a 4 out of 5 on that. Really like that. Design elements, I think I gave this a lower score just because it's kind of busy. There's a lot of things. If you look behind the team logo, it just doesn't seem necessary. If this was either black circle or maybe just a solid color circle, I would think it'd look a little cleaner, a little nicer. But you've got just a little too much visual things going on here. But that's also Bowman. So 3, I feel like, is an average score. Overall design, I feel like it's 4. You know that it's a Bowman card. It's a pretty solid design. I think also when we think about collectability, it really depends on who the player is, obviously. So if there's a hot prospect in Bowman, looking back at those cards, you can probably look at the design a little bit more fondly, as opposed to if it's like a no-name player and there's like really no breakout stars. And that's just kind of how Bowman works. But I think overall, they did a pretty good job with Bowman, and we are going to give them a score of 19. Moving on, we got 2022 Topps Stadium Club. And the biggest design element, I think, of Stadium Club is the photographs. So let's get into it. And as you can see, the photographs, again, take front and center in these designs. A couple of the things that I like that they have this thin line up here at the top. And you might think to yourself, well, that just seems kind of not necessary. Like, why would you have that design element there? Well, a couple things. It matches down here at the bottom where it has a similar design. You're also, instead of only having 2 lines, you have 3 lines, which in design, having 3 or 5 of an element sometimes works a little bit better than having straight kind of even numbers. So that addresses that. But I also like this line because it gives the ability to kind of separate the foreground and the background. And what I mean there is you have like Juan Soto's hands here, Ronald Acuna's head or helmet. I don't know. Oh, yeah, I think he's wearing a panda in this picture. I didn't realize that at first. But it's giving some separation so that the player kind of pops out and gives it some depth as opposed to the background that's blurry. And so that simple line there just gives them the ability to do that. And I think that's a really nice element. I also kind of like the outline of the logo down here in the corner. I think that looks nice. It'll be interesting to see if they do that for all of the logos. Obviously, this is a parallel, so it might look a little different. And I like the font that they chose, pretty clean, sans font. So overall, a pretty nice design. What are some things I would change about this design? Well, as you can see, there's this block that's kind of trapezoid up here at the top, as well as the bottom, kind of a rectangle shape. And I don't really get it. I don't understand why those have been added. I feel like if you took those out and just had this line and then the logo right here, I think it would look a lot better, a lot cleaner. Same with the bottom. You could just have this line extend all the way here. And I also don't really like how it has, it's white in this one, gray in this one. So I just don't understand what they're trying to achieve with those. I think removing those would actually add to the design because it's a little simpler, a little easier to digest. One of my ideas is that it might be a similar shape to the Stadium Club logo. So it's kind of like a brand element that they're trying to add to the top and the bottom. And again, maybe they'll remove those. But for me, that's the kind of the main thing that I really don't like about this logo. All the other elements work pretty well. One other thing that might change is, as you can see down here, Washington Nationals just kind of gets, you've got red on this dark brown of the dirt, and it's really difficult to read. It'll be interesting to see how that translates to in person. I imagine the name, it looks like they put kind of an effect on there to symbolize that it's going to be a foil on the name, like a silver foil, which they often do. If you kept that white, I think it'd look a lot better. But again, we'll kind of have to see how that goes. Let's look at some more of the Stadium Club. We have Shohei Ohtani here, and you can see we also have his glove sticking out over the line. So I think that's a nice element there. Here is what I imagine would be an orange parallel or maybe a gold parallel, depending on how this is rendered. Or it might just be the sepia. It's probably just the sepia. My bad. I don't know why they would change the team logo to like this orange color. I feel like it'd look a lot nicer if it's just a straight white. And I feel like that makes sense because seeing the LA in orange just seems a little off. But again, we'll have to see kind of what the final product looks like. Here are some of the parallels for Stadium Club. Not going to talk too much about this retro design. I'm a big fan of this nostalgia, bringing back any of these types of things. So I think this looks nice. With this card in particular, they could have probably cropped it a little differently so that the 2022 rookie card was maybe displayed on the dirt and then his foot starts up here. Zoom it out a little bit. That might not have been possible, but it's a little difficult to read that. What are you going to do? This Team of the Future card is pretty crazy. My thinking on this is that the regular Stadium Club card might look a little bland, not too great, but when it comes out in chrome, and I imagine all this gray in the background is going to be the chrome, it's going to really pop and really look cool. That was something with 2021 Beam Team. Is the regular Stadium Club, I wasn't a big fan, but when it came out in chrome, I really liked them and started collecting those ones. So I think a lot of the Stadium Club, all of these designs are just going to look so much better once they get to the Stadium Club chrome as well. Here's something else that they did in 2022 Stadium Club is they have these die cut cards, and I'm not a big fan of these. One, the background is not too interesting. Like might be cooler if they had like center field of Yankee Stadium in the background. I think that would look pretty cool. Right now, it's kind of like a futuristic, or you're waiting to come on Sports Center, that type of thing. Just a lot of different lines, futuristic type of things. The other thing I don't like about these is I get what they're trying to go for with the puzzle element, but I think part of design too is thinking about how are people going to be collecting these. And in my mind, you collect these three cards. How are you going to store them? Maybe if you put them in a 9 square sheet, the pieces aren't going to fit together. If you put them in top loaders, the pieces aren't going to go together. So you almost have to, find a picture frame or something to put them in if you want to display them a certain way. And so I feel like you kind of lose some of the coolness about these because yeah, they fit together, but how are you going to store them? How are you going to preview these? None of the kind of standard storage techniques that people have used for years and years would kind of work with these cards. So while it's an interesting thing, not kind of my favorite part of the 2022 Stadium Club. All right, here we go. We are going to get to the review legibility. I gave this a 3, mainly just because sometimes it's hard to read the silver font on a photo background. I think that's kind of across the board with a lot of Stadium Club designs. And also the team name, I think is just going to be hard to read. So kind of middle of the road as far as legibility. Color scheme, I think it's really nice just having it clean with the white and the gray. So I feel like that'll really look nice with a lot of photos. Can't go wrong with just a simple color scheme. Design elements, I gave this kind of a 3 as well, just because of those squares, those shapes at the top and the bottom. I'm just not a big fan of those. I don't know what they were going for, and I think it would look a lot better if they had removed those. Overall design, going to give a 3, mainly for what those reasons I just said. And collectability, I'm going to give a 5 just because I feel like Stadium Club is always just kind of a timeless card that you're going to want to go back to. You have some cool inserts, especially the 1991 throwback design. I think it's going to look nice. And all of these designs, I think, are just going to look that much better when it comes to Chrome as well. So Stadium Club gets a final score of 18. And we are moving on to 2022 Gypsy Queen. Let's get into it. And here we go. Gypsy Queen took a different approach. Oftentimes, these designs are meant to look like tarot cards or kind of turn of the century, Victorian age, lots of flourishes, lots of different things like that. This time, they kept some of those things. They definitely went with a steampunk type approach, adding in this kind of turnstile type thing, something you'd see at an old school airport or train station where it has the names kind of flipping up and down, which I really think is an interesting approach, something I don't think I've ever seen on a card design before, as well as the kind of a turnstile type thing where you get the position. So you have outfield here, but you can also see that there's shortstop above it and pitcher below it. So it's almost like this card has been customized with an old school steampunk type contraption to come up with the name and the position. And then you also have a little card that's coming out three-dimensional. And this is probably one of my favorite design elements. I don't think I've ever seen something quite like this, a little element that's almost, they made it look with the shadows and the angle like it's actually coming out of the card. So I think that's really interesting. Appreciate that they kind of did something different, kind of mixed it up. And I think that'll be this will be a design that people will definitely remember. And especially if there's some hot rookies, this will be a cool card design to collect. So those are some things that I like about this design. Some things that I might change on this design. We have these kind of elements up here at the top, and they're just kind of different just for different sake. I feel like you could have maybe kept these similar. I'm not a big fan of this kind of big circle here. I think if they kept this a little bit more contained, a little bit more of just like an element around the card, I would have liked it a little bit better. Also, I wasn't quite sure about this rookie card design. I was like, why is it at an angle? But looking at it closely, I think they might make it, they're trying to get the appearance of like a three-dimensional pin or something like that. And so it's just slightly askew to kind of communicate that. So, but for the most part, it's a Gypsy Queen design. And I think if you look at this card, you'd instantly be able to say, yes, this is Gypsy Queen. This is not Stadium Club. This is not the flagship. This is definitely not Bowman. So I think they met their criteria with that. So as you can see here, here's a few different examples of some of the designs. And I like this one where they maintain kind of that same kind of analog approach to the nameplate, which is cool, but it's a little bit more contained. It almost looks like they have a picker here where it picks the different positions. And this definitely reminds me of kind of early 2000s websites or things that definitely had that three-dimensional button look, or like old school video games like Mystic, I think would come to mind. I really like this top certified autograph. It makes it look like it's stamped here in the corner. I think that's a really cool approach. And so I almost like this design here, this autograph design, a little bit better than kind of the standard design. One thing I forgot to mention too is this is the ruby red parallel. So you've got a red border, and this is meant to look like the chrome insert that comes in like hobby boxes and stuff like that. So be interested to see what the actual color of these sides are, if it's a more white or kind of a dirty brown tan that sometimes Gypsy Queen cards have on it. And then we have another kind of insert here with the Virgo stars in the background and the different astrological symbols, which is another kind of telltale sign of a Gypsy Queen design. And I think these both look pretty nice. I like them. Here we go with a few more inserts from Gypsy Queen. We have a Magic Ball die cut here, which I think is cool. It definitely fits Gypsy Queen. It does seem like we just had an insert with the Magic Ball type thing in 2021 Stadium Club, so it's a little interesting that they're bringing it back here. But it definitely fits the Gypsy Queen aesthetic, so I think it'll be a cool insert to collect. And then we have another one here. It's kind of a mini design, I feel like, similar to the Captain cards in 2021. And you have the different symbols here, the gemstones that match the astronomical symbol, that type of thing. So another kind of solid design. I do like kind of the industrial screws here in the corner. It's interesting, just carries through that steampunk aesthetic. All right, let's get to our score for 2022 Gypsy Queen baseball cards. Legibility, I gave this kind of middle of the road just because while I do like the nameplate and the creativity there, it might be difficult for people to read that. I also think it's going to be interesting what they do with longer names. Like Scherzer is pretty long, but I know there's longer names in MLB, so it'll be interesting to see how they fit that. If they have to really cram all the letters in there. Color scheme, I think I'm going to give a 4. I really like the creativity of having this card sticking out, and I think it's going to match the team colors. Whenever you match the team colors, I'm going to give you points for that. And again, the color scheme is kind of this rusted steampunk type look, and I think that matches the aesthetic that they're going for. Design elements, I'm going to give a 5. Really like all just the creativity with this design and how it's different from previous Gypsy Queen baseball, and I'm going to give it a 4. Just kind of mainly this kind of elements here that come out of the top and the bottom. I just don't like those. I kind of like the autograph design a little bit better when it's a little bit more contained within the card. But overall, I think it works pretty well. It's a nice Gypsy Queen design. Collectability 4. I think this is definitely one that you're going to look back and be like, yeah, I remember that one. That was the year the Gypsy Queen went steampunk. So Gypsy Queen's final score, 20. All right, let's see. What are we going on to next? We got 2022 Donruss. Now, this one's a little bit rough, so be prepared. Here we go. I'm going to start off with some things that I like about this design. Well, I like that they're using this old school Donruss logo, like the kind of the racing stripes on that is pretty bold, nice D Donruss logo like that. The nameplate, I don't know if it's because of Cruz and Santa Cruz skateboards. It definitely reminds me kind of like a skateboard aesthetic, but it's nice and easy to read. And I think that's going to be the things that I like about this design. Some things I think they could do better. I don't know what they're going for with this. So it looks like they're trying to have kind of some 3 dimension, some depth to the design, but it's not consistent. So you have some squares that are smaller, some that are bigger, but you also have this element here, this white bar. It's longer on this one, shorter on this one, but it doesn't have the shadow. So I don't know what they're trying to get with that and why it's not consistent. Also, even with this main kind of back one here with the gray and the black, this should be the same distance, I would think. So, meaning that the height of the black one should be the width of the gray one, but the gray one looks skinnier. And so it just kind of throws off that 3 dimensional look. And you also are just giving a lot of real estate. A lot of this design is to these shapes, almost to the detriment of the card design. I feel like if you think back about 2020 Donruss and 2021 Donruss, they had a really clean, fresh design. It looked really nice. I feel like this is definitely a step back. It's really busy and it's really hard to determine what this card's going to look like in person. I know for this, I think this is the blue foil design, so it'll be interesting to see too. Is this border going to be white around it? Obviously, this is some type of green prism or some type of parallel as well. Right now, they look really dark. It might be lightened up. Also, in person, maybe this gray is supposed to be something else and it just flows a little bit better. But right now, looking at these designs, I'm not a big fan. I feel like it's way too busy, and I just don't really get what they're going for with this. Here are some of the parallels. I think this Bomb Squad one, they obviously simplified the nameplate where you just have the logo and the name, and it's a lot cleaner. It's everything's kind of flowing in the right direction, so it does give you that three-dimensional look, and it's not too overwhelming. So even if they had just taken this design and had an image on here, I don't think they would have done that. But I would have really liked that a lot better than what we saw in the previous screen. But I think these Bomb Squad ones are definitely going to be ones people are looking for, kind of a harder pull that will be definitely collectible. 2021 Donruss had the Unleashed cards for the very first time. I think those were really popular. This design, instead of having like 3 or 4 animals, only because 2, you have this bear in the background and this bird, or I don't know if it's a crow or a hawk, what it is, but I feel like losing some of those animals, you kind of lose the effect of what last year's design had. People new to the sport might be confused, like is Tatis on the Cubs or what's going on? I'm not as big a fan as the 2021 design. I feel like that kind of took a step back as well. Here's some more inserts, the whammy cards caricature. I feel like this is pretty similar to what has happened in the past, kind of clean design. So I feel like pretty decent here. I would uh, this one on the right, the signature series, I would be kind of bummed if I pulled this auto, to be frank with you, just because yes, it'd be awesome to get Wander Franco auto, but the signature series just is we're going to go back to contrast here. You have this gray and then the white, and there's just not enough contrast there. So then you also have this really dark shadow, and so it kind of just looks amateurish. It doesn't look very clean, or they're still going for that three-dimensional look, but I feel like you might have had to have if they had this signature series on a darker background, like maybe a regular blue, I think it'd look a lot better. Right now, it's a little too jarring. Again, you just have all these mismatched shadows. Like, is this supposed to be popping out one direction, or this shadow makes it look like it's popping out a different direction? This one, there's some depth here, and so it's kind of curling around these different squares. It's just kind of confusing. It looks like they just kind of slapped on a bunch of elements without really thinking of how they played well with each other. Here's some of the throwback designs. I imagine this will be kind of a gold color. If it's this actual kind of brown color, it's a little garish, I think is a word. We'll say it's a word. Not a big fan of that. I think if it's more of a chromy gold color, I think it'll look a little nicer. And the throwback design, some people are going to like this, some people aren't. I'm going to like it because of nostalgia. It's kind of classic, clean, and just reminds you of, I believe, 1988 Donruss. Let me know if I'm wrong. We're moving on with our review, and unfortunately, the scores are not going to be high. Legibility, I gave it a 4 just because it is very easy to read the nameplate as well as the team city, not the team name. And we also have a color scheme of 2. It's really hard to figure out what these cards are going to look like, the base design. But I think I'm not a big fan of so much gray and so much black on the cards, as well as just shapes that don't seem to make sense. I feel like that kind of ties into the color scheme. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what these cards look like in person. Design elements, I'm going to give a 1 because of all the reasons I've been kind of ranting about up until this point. Overall design, 2. I think if you kept this nameplate and the logo and kind of lost a lot of these elements and maybe just had a simple border around it, it'd look really sharp and clean. And I think that'd be an acceptable design. But with all these kind of extras, it just does not do it to me. And so collectability 2 as well. I think Donruss is already fighting a uphill battle, not having the team logos. And so having kind of a crazy design like this is only going to hurt them. My opinion, maybe you really like this, but to me, I feel like this is definitely a step back from the last couple of years. Fortunately, they get a score of 11. Last on our list, 2022 Topps Series 1. Let's get into it. Here we go. Some things I like about this design. I, of course, like that they matched this design element, this border around the outside with the team colors. So you have this light blue for Tampa, this red for Atlanta. I think a lot of people are going to be just enjoying reading these cards because the nameplate is really easy to read. You have a good amount of contrast between the navy kind of blue in the background and the white of the text. I like that they incorporated baseball design element here. where you have this thin line, but it also forms a baseball here in the corner. I think that's really interesting, a cool design element there. And I think it's just a clean, kind of modern looking design. And you can tell this is a flagship design, which I think is what they were obviously going for. Some people compared this font to what they would see on Bowman cards, and I could see that. I think they're actually using a similar font as they've used in Bowman in years past. I feel like they did a good enough job kind of differentiating it between Bowman that its own kind of flagship design. So overall, I really like this design. I think they did a great job on it. In my opinion, this design would have almost worked better as the 2021 70 years of Topps design. Can you imagine having that cool like 70s Topps logo up here in the corner? I think that would look really nice. And then almost had the 2021 design as the 2022 design is kind of a more futuristic kind of view, that type of thing. But overall, I think they did a good job kind of improving on some of the complaints from the 2021 design. Here's some of the parallels. This is some type of platinum or some type of colored parallel. So you've got some shapes here. My personal opinion, I probably liked it if they just kept it like a solid color for the parallels, but not going to complain too much about that. I feel like it's pretty minimal what they're trying to do just to kind of give it some depth with these shapes down here at the top and the bottom. And of course, I think everybody's going to enjoy, for the most part, unless you had bad memories of 1987 Topps, the wood grain designs. And this Future Stars just looks really awesome. This is a really cool looking card, and really like the 87 throwbacks. It'll be interesting to see if they're going to print them on glossy cards or if it's going to be more of a matte finish like the 52, 65, and 92 throwbacks from 2021 Topps. So it'll be interesting to see how those look once they're printed. I included this slide because this shows us some of the back of the card. And I think they keep that kind of clean, really nice design here on the back. And they also incorporate part of the baseball design with this line that goes around it as well. I think here too, they talked about some of the positives I like about this design. Some of the things I might change about this design. I feel like there is a lot of shadows, like there's drop shadows everywhere. You can see here it's made to add some depth, which is okay. I think this might be one of those things where if you see the card in person, they might not be as noticeable. To me, it just seems a little bit overdone. Like you could have probably kept it a little simpler, removing some of those things. Same with the gradient here on the nameplate. So see where it goes to navy to white to gray kind of. I feel like if you just it kept that a solid color, I feel like it would look a little sharper, a little cleaner. But other than that, I think they did a pretty good job with this design. Here's some more of those inserts. Flash's feet. I'm not personally a shoe guy, so these cards are not going to be my favorite kind of insert set. The texture on the top and the bottom is pretty interesting and colorful, but overall, not a huge fan of that. These Generation Now cards, I do like this design. Definitely seems kind of Sports Center ish, with the circle, that type of thing. And I think this is going to be one of those designs, kind of like the Decades Next from 2020 Topps, where the regular design is going to look okay, but then when this comes out in chrome, and imagine all this background here where you can kind of see the shine, is going to be chrome, and I think that's going to really look like 10 times better. It's going to really pop. So I'm going to hold judgment off on this one until it comes out in chrome. All right, our final design score, Topps 2022 Series 1 for legibility. We're going to give it a 4. I think they did a really great job improving this. There's spacing, there's good contrast, there's not a lot of visual noise, so it's really easy to read the name. And I don't think people are probably going to be mentioning, oh, this is so much easier than reading 2021 when you watch people's videos. Hold me to that. I bet that's going to happen. Color scheme, I'm going to give that a 4. I think other than just so many shadows and stuff like that, I really like the color scheme. I really like how the line matches the team color. Just imagine like a 9 square folder sheet with all your team's players in there. I think it'll look really sharp having all those colors matching. Design elements, I'm going to give it a 5. I think they did a great job incorporating some modern looking design as well as kind of that baseball in the corner aesthetic. And so I think that's a great addition. And you definitely look at this card and can tell it's a baseball card. Overall design, we're going to give it 4. Again, I think my major kind of nitpick of this design is all the shadows and gradients and stuff. If you think back to the 1983 Topps design where it had kind of simple, solid lines, that's the kind of thing I like. So I think my opinion, that would look a lot nicer. But overall, I think they did a good job. Collectability, we're going to give this a 5. Obviously, everybody's looking for the Wander Franco rookie card. Be interested to see what other cards people really like out of the set. But I think we're going to look back at this design fondly. Final score for Series 1, 22 points. Here we go. Final score recap. Bowman, we gave a 19. Stadium Club, we gave it 18. We gave Gypsy Queen a 20, which going into this, I probably would have given a lower score, but I think they did a pretty good job with Gypsy Queen, and I'm giving them kind of points for their creativity with that design. Donruss, unfortunately, was the worst that out of these 5, definitely, and the score definitely reflects that. And our leader in the clubhouse, Topps Series 1. All right, what do you think? What was your favorite design? What was your least favorite design? What sets are you looking forward to in 2022 that we didn't review? Should we be doing more of these reviews? Do you like my tiny face down in the corner of the videos? Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Congratulations on making it to opening week of 2022 baseball cards. Enjoy collecting. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to rock and roll.